I don't know if you know a lot about Slovakia, but we're about to get into it tonight. We're about to talk about Slovakia tonight because apparently Prime Minister Robert Fico was shot. This was in an assassination attempt. Someone tried to take Robert down. Let's go ahead and dive in with this clip here from ABC News, and then I'm going to explain to you why this happened, why the attacker went after him. Believe it or not, it may have a little something to do with Ukraine. Let's dive in.
Breaking news now, an assassination attempt on the Prime Minister of Slovakia. Robert Fico was gunned down outside a government building earlier today. Security officials swarming the scene, wrestling the suspected shooter to the ground with help from onlookers just moments after the shots rang out. The Prime Minister rushed to a hospital by helicopter, carried in on a stretcher. Authorities say that he's conscious, but he's in a life-threatening condition right now. Let's bring in our foreign correspondent, Britt Clennett. So much to talk about here. First of all, he's the leader of an Eastern European country which borders Ukraine and the Czech Republic. He is said to be pro-Russian, has talked about not supporting aid to Ukraine. Do we know anything more about why this all went down and how?
Yeah, all that you said is correct. He certainly courts controversy, and it is a politically tumultuous time in Slovakia. Now, the office of the Slovak Prime Minister, Robert Fico, says he is in a life-threatening condition after an assassination attempt. The Prime Minister had just held a government meeting in the town of Handlova when he was fired from what really appears to be very close range, Kira. And in a video, you can hear very clearly 5 shots being fired. He was then bundled off into a car by his security. Local reports say he was shot in the stomach, in the arm, and in the leg.
Pause there for just a second. So he has been shot in 3 places on his body. And they did say again that he is in critical condition. This is a serious deal here. It's not like he was shot in the arm and something that he can recover from a lot quicker than obviously if you're shot in the stomach. That's serious. So the attacker who went after him was seriously trying to kill Robert. Was seriously trying to end. That was it. Notice they said he was shot at close range. So they got close enough to him to obviously leave quite an impact. Very interesting times, folks.
Alleged assailant was immediately apprehended, and the man wearing a pale blue shirt was then seen as sitting on the ground, hands tied behind his back. And another video, Kira, shows the PM being taken away on a stretcher, arriving at the hospital. Paramedics on both sides. His body is blocked from view. Fico was airlifted by helicopter, as you say, to a hospital just east of Handlova. And at the time, the PM office said his condition was just too serious to be taken to Bratislava itself.
So now we're now getting an update just as you speak that he is actually fighting for his life at this hour. So it seems that things might have taken a turn for the worse. You know, any idea of a motive here, Britt? I mean, I mentioned that the Prime Minister has generated a lot of controversy. You took note of that. Definitely said that this staunch position that he's taken against providing aid to Ukraine might possibly play into what happened here.
Yeah, look.
There's no might. There's no might. We'll get into a couple more details about that in a second.
Kira, no motive is being reported at this very moment, but local reports say the attacker is an amateur writer. It's believed that he used a pistol that he held legally, Kira. This all took place in a former mining town. It's known for its strong political support for the Prime Minister. And President Biden, Kira, condemned the horrific act of violence, he said, and said that the U.S. Embassy is in close touch with the Slovak government and is ready to assist. And the Slovak president told reporters that the shooting of Fico was an attack on democracy. Now, in recent years, as you mentioned, Fico has courted this controversy for his kind of populist and nationalistic even views. Fico has also been vocal about, as you say, opposing Russian sanctions and threatened even to veto any future NATO membership proposal for Ukraine itself. Fico has also been accused of aligning himself with right-wing Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban. He's criticized also for his attempt to shut down the public broadcaster. And the concern now among liberals is that this event may lead to a further crackdown on the media and other freedoms in Slovakia.
Okay, let me chime in here for just a second. We'll bring up a couple of articles here that give a little bit more detail. One of the things that I do want to add, and someone actually pointed this out in the chat, so thank you so much for that, Lorez. Redacted read a report that his security detail was lackadaisical. Yeah, that was another thing that I saw too, is that the security apparently was not airtight. That's suspicious, right? So I want to get into this article here from Common Dreams, where it says far-right Prime Minister of Slovakia shot in assassination attempt. This is the part I want to highlight here. We want to talk a little bit here about the past, and we want to talk a little bit about the motive. Fico was first elected prime minister in 2006 and faced corruption allegations during his political career. Now, he resigned in 2018 during mass protests over the killing of an investigative journalist who was conducting a government probe and was again elected last September. The prime minister has opposed mainstream European Union policies and sending military aid to Ukraine. So even though Slovakia is a part of NATO, it's one of those NATO countries that actually did not agree with sending military aid to Ukraine. So that's important. It goes on to say Slovakia became the first country to halt such aid in October after Fico took office. Stunned reactions poured in from leaders in Slovakia and around the world, and President Zuzana, a staunch defender of Ukraine, condemning the shooting in the strongest possible terms. Now, I want to get into another piece here. We'll talk about the assassination attempt. Slovak officials say attempted assassination of Prime Minister Fico motivated by reduced Ukraine aid, other policy squabbles. So let's think about what has happened to some of these leaders that either decided not to take a position in reference to Russia and Ukraine, or they decided to oppose it. We can look at Pakistan, for example. We can look at Imran Khan. Remember, it was revealed that the United States government actually pressured the police in Pakistan to arrest and imprison Imran Khan. A big part of that was because he did not want to take a position in reference to Russia and Ukraine. He wanted to remain neutral. Imran Khan still sits in prison today, right? And from what I understand, he's been treated very, very harshly in prison in Pakistan, right? So, and now you have the prime minister of Slovakia, who was just, a part of an assassination attempt. This is crazy, you guys. It's like people are willing to take people out because they are against some of these wars. So it goes on to say here, the alleged gunman implicated in the recent attack has been formally charged with attempted premeditated murder, high-ranking officials said during a press conference on Thursday. They said the attack was politically motivated. So when the reporter in the ABC News segment said, it might have to do with, no. It does have to do with that. It has to do with him rejecting, this idea of aid to Ukraine. It goes on to say that the attacker is described as a lone wolf and said he was radicalized after the country's last presidential elections. The country's political landscape was transformed last October by the populist prime minister's return to power. So we're seeing another attack on these populist leaders, right? Fico campaigned with an emphasis on reducing military aid to Ukraine and has implemented a range of controversial policies. In staging the attack, It goes on to say, this is Sucha, said that the suspect was motivated by his opposition to several such policies, including the dissolution of Slovakia's special prosecutor's office, reducing aid to Ukraine, the overhaul of state TV and radio broadcasters, and the ouster of a high-ranking judiciary official. So there's a number of things here. It goes on to say, during Thursday's press conference, Deputy Prime Minister Robert Kalinak provided updates on Fico's health, emphasizing the gravity of the wounds he sustained from 4 gunshots. So you see why I wanted to show you another news outlet here, because the reporter on ABC News said there were 3 gunshots. In this article, they're saying he was shot 4 times. This is why it's important to look at other sources. The extent of the injury sustained by the prime minister is large. It is polytraumatic damage to his body. The surgery, in terms of the duration and a number of surgeons, just confirms the gravity. We can only hope that the situation will improve. The officials warned reporters attending the conference of the role shoddy journalism can have in exacerbating violence. All we ask from the press is for objective reporting in order to avoid having lone wolves who have been radicalized, thinking that abolishing the special prosecutor's office is sufficient reason to shoot somebody. So now they're blaming the press. And Cloudness said, I heard he had 5 gunshots. So you see, this is why it's important to read different outlets here. It goes on to say they did not name the alleged assailant during the conference, citing embargoes preventing the dissemination of information. Local media identified the suspect as 71-year-old Jiraj Sintula. He was initially described as a member of the country's progressive Slovakia party, though the latter quickly distanced itself from him. Party co-founder Mikhail stated, "We share the dismay over today's assassination attempt on the prime minister. We are concerned about further escalation of tension in society. Therefore, we warn against spreading false information about the shooter. We unequivocally reject any suggestion that he was a member of our movement. There is absolutely no other connection between him and our party or our members. We strongly condemn his atrocious act." Now, if he's convicted, he will face up to 25 years in prison. So that party is making sure that they are not aligning themselves with him at all. And then there's more, because this also has something to do with Ukrainian membership in NATO. So check this out. We're getting deep today. If you didn't know about the prime minister of Slovakia, you're going to learn about him tonight. Slovakia would veto Ukrainian membership in NATO, Prime Minister says ahead of Kyiv visit. So this was January 22nd, 2024. Guys, that was just a couple of months ago. It's only May. So he made his, stance known. He let everybody know, I'm not really feeling this idea of Ukraine joining NATO. So it says Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico says he will tell his Ukrainian counterpart that Slovakia would reject Ukraine joining NATO because its membership would mean nothing other than a basis for World War III. Everyone listen to this. Robert Fico believed that if Ukraine joined NATO, this would actually push us into World War III. That is why he rejected their membership. He said, no, I would not let them join. I would not vote for them. So whatever you think of his policies or his politics, the guy who just had an assassination attempt on his life was trying to prevent World War III. Coincidence? Definitely, they were motivated. Listen, Fico is preparing to travel to Ukraine on January 24th to meet Prime Minister Denise for talks in the border city of Uzurhad. So this is why, and listen to this part too. One more part I want to mention. One reason for the visit is to present a further aid package, but Fico said in an interview on January 20th with a Slovak public broadcaster that he would also make clear the Slovak position on Ukraine's desire to join NATO. I will tell them that I am against the membership of Ukraine in NATO and that I will veto it. Goes on to say, adding Ukraine, if Ukraine were added to NATO, some conflicts will be constantly instigated there. And once a clash happens between Russia and a NATO member state, we will have a world war. Well, he was definitely paying attention. He knew what was coming. So think about this, folks. We don't hear President Biden saying this. We don't hear a lot of the prime ministers and the presidents of some of the Western countries saying what Robert obviously knew was very likely to happen. And just like that, someone tried to take Robert out. It goes on to say, NATO in July reaffirmed its position that Ukraine will one day become a member of the alliance, and members voted to simplify Ukraine's path to accession, such as the removal of the requirement for a membership action plan. NATO has also formed the NATO-Ukraine Council to improve relations. However, NATO members are torn over when to admit Ukraine, and no vote or decision on membership is imminent. Slovakia, which has been a member of NATO since 2004, was one of Ukraine's staunchest supporters in its defense against Russia's full-scale invasion. But when Fico, left-wing nationalist government took power in October, Slovakia decided to no longer supply Kyiv with weapons. So this is not a coincidence, folks. It's very clear what is happening here. I wouldn't be surprised if the guy who, the alleged assassin, I wouldn't be surprised if he may have been pushed, right? Who knows if he may have been pushed to do this? You never know. We may never know the full truth. But what we do know is that he did not want Ukraine to become a member of NATO, and he did not want Ukraine to get funding and weapons. And he does not want World War III. Now, this guy right now is in the hospital fighting for his life. Simply C said he's a hired gun for sure. Yeah, like that's what I would assume as well. This is just, it's packaged too nicely. You know what I mean? It's just put together a little too tight for me to not have some type of, implication because of his position with NATO. Now, what do I think? Do I think that Ukraine should be a part of NATO? No, NATO is not supposed to expand. It was never supposed to expand after the fall of the Berlin Wall. So I don't understand why they're still trying to do this unless NATO does want us to have a World War III. This whole war that we have right now with Russia and Ukraine, you have to remember this is a proxy war. This war was pushed by NATO. Think about where they would be today if it were not for this. A lot of Ukrainians, for people who say they care about the lives of Ukrainians, a lot of Ukrainians will be alive right now. We'll have to see what happens to Fico. But one more part here. Fico also asserted in the interview that Ukraine is not an independent and sovereign country, saying it is under the total influence and control of the United States. Fam, again, right here. He said that Ukraine is under the total influence and control of the United States. So they trying to stop this guy. It goes on to say the remark repeated a baseless claim that Russia had made repeatedly. So you see this? I will be following this story in the next couple of days to see if Fico does recover. Because like I said, even when I checked this morning, they said he is fighting for his life. And if he does not recover, and if he does die, then maybe then NATO will be able to install someone that is going to do their bidding. And that's probably what would happen. This is probably what they want. I just find the timing to be a little bit suspect, don't you think? Interesting times we're living in, folks. Interesting times.